Welcome back into Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Don't forget, head over to youtube.com. Put Locked On Sports Atlanta in the browser. Find our channel. Subscribe to it. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about this show. Respond to what we say here. And, of course, give me a follow on my personal Twitter page. That would be at JMCH316. Well, Kyle Pitts is a guy who obviously the unicorn that was drafted last year and now gets to add Drake London as a running mate. And, look, when you look back at Kyle Pitts' season last year, it was a good season. I'm not going to say it was a great season, but it was a good season. 68 receptions, 1,026 yards, 15 yards per reception. Had his longest pass was 61 yards last year. Averaged about 60, just over 60 yards per game. The big stat, of course, is the one touchdown that we'll talk about here in just a second. But Drake London in the mix now. Obviously, you don't have Matt Ryan throwing to you. What does Kyle Pitts need to do to get better? What are expectations for Kyle Pitts? One number that really sticks out to me is if you look last year, his catch percentage is 61.8%. Now, look at some of the other tight ends around the league. Look at Kelsey and Kittle and guys like that. Those guys push up into high 60s, low 70 percentile of catch percentage. So if there's two big things that I think that I can look at with Kyle Pitts, one is his catch percentage. Now, last year, Pitts had 110 targets. Can I tell you, I don't think that number is going to change very much. I mean, this you don't have the quarterback, and we've explained all this. Matt Ryan throwing it 600 times. Mariota's best year is 450. You don't have a quarterback that throws it all over the yard. It's not what Marcus Mariota does, and it certainly won't be what Desmond Ridder does if he gets a chance, to play. So if you told me Pitts got 110 targets, I think that's about right. I think without a Matt Ryan capable quarterback, I think that number is about right. And I think that number holds true year over year. But the first thing that I need for Pitts is he's got to increase that catch percentage. Okay. And yes, some of that falls on your quarterback and this and the other, but there's no reason why Pitts in the target that he is shouldn't be up in the mid to high 60s, 66, 68% catch percentage. What does that mean? That means a whole bunch more receptions. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can add another 5 or 6%, and he can make some big impact plays, I think that's the first thing that I look at in some of his raw numbers. The other thing is obviously the touchdowns. And look, this has been a bugaboo for the Atlanta Falcons for years now. Not getting enough touchdowns for Julio, not getting enough touchdowns last year from Pitts. If you told me Pitts only stayed, let's say Pitts, for instance, goes up to about 75, 77 catches, and he's only maybe around 1,100 yards. And I say only, but it's around 1,100 yards. I would much rather live, because 15.1 yards per reception is an outstanding number. But if you told me we could bring that number down and he gets more touchdowns to it, I'll take that gladly. I know he's the unicorn and the open field threat and things like that. But if his yards per reception is coming down as his touchdowns are going up, that would make sense, right? Shorter field, this, that, and the other. You're not going to have a whole bunch of 40-yard touchdown catches, right? That's just not realistic in the league, Your touchdown receptions are probably 3, 5, 7, 8 yards, somewhere in that range. Less than a first down, right? But that touchdown number has to come up. So I would sacrifice the yards per reception to get more touchdowns. And if his catch percentage can move itself up 67, 68%, now his catch, total catches will come up. Now his chance to make big impact plays comes up without having to really change up what his role was even in the offense, as far as total number of targets, right? Because I've seen people say, well, maybe 125, 150 targets. Okay, for Marcus Mariota, that means a third of all of his passes are going to one guy. I don't think it's realistic, and I don't think they're going to throw the football enough in this offense to make that kind of change. I'm good right at where he is for right now, telling me that he's about 110 targets. Okay. Think that's a realistic number. But if the catch percentage can come up, the touchdowns can come up, even at the sacrifice of yards per reception, now I think we've got something in Kyle Pitts. And look, he has to be a bigger threat in the red zone. And there were times last year, this was frustrating and maddening, where you didn't see him on the field early in the year in some of our red zone or short, goal line types of situations, that he wasn't on the field. And, they had all the excuses in the world about why it happened or this, that, and the other. But also remember, too, is that, look, say what you will about training camp, preseason, this, that, and the other. There is going to be a learning curve with having a brand new quarterback and getting him in the offense. And not just the quarterback receiver relationship, but you have a guy that is not a high percentage thrower, and he's not a guy who throws it a lot. I mean, that's the reality of Marcus Mariota. That's why I keep going back to our offensive identity, because you have changed up. And it's not like you brought a guy in to play quarterback whose mantra is stand back and shotgun and throw it all over the field. It's not what he does. Yeah, he can run. He can do some things. He's more mobile than Matt, but he doesn't throw it like Matt, and he doesn't complete at the percentage that Matt did. And so there is going to be that learning curve, new guy, and this, that, and the other. But I've got to get more touchdowns out of Kyle Pitts. And I think if you told me that number goes up, even if I have to sacrifice his yards, if he only stayed about the same, get my catch percentage up, get my total catches up, and get my touchdowns up, I can live with that. And this will be interesting in Arthur Smith's offense in year 2, how they change up Kyle Pitts. I'm not going to tell you that he's going to split out wide and he's going to be a number 2 wide receiver and he's going to run all over the field. He's still going to play some inline. He may not put his hand in the dirt and come off the edge like a traditional tight end. He'll split out and do some things and play in the slot and this, that, and the other. But I'm not thinking that he's going to spend a lot of time. He's going to split out wide and he's going to be like a number 2 wide receiver. I just don't see that happening. I think it's London. I think it's Tate. I think they'll give those guys the first shot. Maybe Zacchaeus, is the other, is the number 2 guy. But that number 2 battle will be, and Pitts will line up slots, spread out a little bit. He'll do a lot of different things. And I'm excited to see what Arthur Smith now with a year under his belt can do. But you're going to have to get over that learning curve of quarterback-receiver relationship, and just the fact that Mariota's not a guy who hucks it all over the field. In a heavy passing league, he's not a guy who traditionally stands back there and hucks it all over the place. So I'm going to be watching the catch percentage. I'm going to be watching the targets, because I think that number is pretty much in line year over year of where he'll be. Tell me that he catches more passes in this offense, his yards per reception comes down, his touchdowns go up. I think Kyle Pitts can be a real breakout star and, really even build off of what last year was. All right, we thank you so much for being part of the show. And I want to remind you, we thank you for making us your first listen. But ATL Day Ones, we want you to make that your second listen. Jarvis Davis, Tanitra Batiste, talking about speaking of the heart of the city of Atlanta. Bulldogs, Falcons, Braves, Hawks, everything that you could want, here, be a part of the conversation. ATL Day Ones is also part of our Locked On Sports Atlanta network, and of course, free and available on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast platform. So we'll talk about the Falcons schedule tomorrow. It is schedule release day, and we'll go through and see kind of, how it looks for the Falcons and how difficult, how this, that, and the other. So we'll talk about all of that and more tomorrow. It's been Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.